Okay, in moving from Scott Snyder's Batman run to Peter Tomasi's Batman and Robin run, I should acknowledge a few things before starting to comment about the story of Born to Kill. The first thing to acknowledge is that the Batman and Robin comic series first started in 2009 by Grant Morrison as a part of Hanen's long-running Batman story arc, which started with Batman and Son. By the time Morrison was done with telling the story Han wanted to tell with it, and then moved on to Batman Incorporated, which was still active early in the New 52 as an initiative for international Batman in all around the world, DC did not cancel the book and instead put Peter Tomasi in charge of continuing it. Tomasi stayed with the book up until the New 52 happened, and when it did happen, he pretty much adapted to the changes necessary at the time, such as making the Batman and Robin in it be the father and son team of Bruce Wayne and his son Damian, unlike how Grant Morrison had started it with Dick Grayson as Batman with Damian as his Robin. To anyone interested, if this 4-part series is received well, I am very likely going to do a similar review series in covering Grant Morrison's Batman run to explore it in a longer format than that quick summary I made in the Batman and Sons of Batman video. Then, and another reason why the Batman and Robin series was kept active was because Scott Snyder did not use Robin very much in his run. I understand that his son was the same age as Damian at the time, so Snyder was not comfortable to use him in the series he wrote. But Peter Tomasi, whose son was 8 at the time when Born to Kill came out, clearly did not have that same problem. And then there is one other thing that needs to be acknowledged when it comes to the main antagonist of this Born to Kill story. Mild spoilers for his identity, but it needs to be acknowledged in how he is related to Liam Neeson's character in Batman Begins. More or less how he was in the end revealed to be the real Ra's al Ghul after having been initially presented as a man named Henri Ducard. In the comics, Henri Ducard is a French manhunter and one of the teachers who trained Bruce to be Batman, and not an alias used by Ra's al Ghul, nor is he in any way connected to the League of Assassins. So, when Christopher Nolan cast Liam Neeson in Batman Begins, he combined the two characters into one character. Keep this in mind when I go over Peter Tomasi's Born to Kill story in the first 7 issues of the New 52 Batman and Robin comic.
My name is Henri Ducard, but I speak for Henri Ducard.
This story begins in Moscow, where one of the international Batmen of the Batman Incorporated, while apprehending a criminal, gets ambushed by someone who kills them both. On the other side of the world, Bruce Wayne tells his son Damian that they are going to make a stop before heading out to patrol Gotham as Batman and Robin. As they go down to the Batcave to suit up and then set up to leave via the underground bat train, it is revealed to be the anniversary of Bruce's parents' deaths, and now as a parent himself, Bruce wants Damian as his son to be present for a new tradition of honoring them. In the past, Bruce had always placed flowers at the site of their deaths, but now for the last time he is instead going to start honoring their lives by sending a paper boat sailing into the darkness of Gotham's sewers. I wonder how many other writers after Peter Tomasi actually kept up with this tradition, but after being done with it, Batman and Robin get alerted to the Gotham University, where a stylistic action sequence showcasing the artist Patrick Gleason's talents shows them engaging with tech robbers. They split up with Batman and Robin getting similarly separated, making Batman not be able to see what happens to the group that Robin went after, and make it look like the robbers were accidentally or intentionally vaporized by the irradiated fuel they were carrying. The fact that Batman can only take Robin's word on what happened makes their already shaky partnership as a father and son team even more fragile as they leave, while that nobody from the opening is shown lowering the Russian Batman and the criminal he caught in acid, and then declares that it is time he visited Bruce Wayne.
I'm having an old friend
Back at the Batcave, Bruce and Alfred observe Damian going through a training gauntlet as Robin, while also summarizing the condensed New52 version of Damian's origin and backstory, in reminding us that he is Batman's and Talia's son raised and trained by the League of Assassins, and implying that Damian's growth was accelerated by having been incubated in an artificial womb, so making him appear to be a 10-year-old but be biologically younger. All these factors make Bruce worried about what kind of person Damian could be without him, and feeling that it is his responsibility as Damian's father to undo the influence the League of Assassins had on the boy. Later, Bruce is shown approaching Damian in his room in the Wayne Manor to check up on his homeschool projects before inviting him to come with him to take down weapon smugglers as Batman and Robin. This time, their cooperation goes down faster and cleaner, which Batman commends Robin for using restraint and Robin brushing it off with the smugglers deserving worse, which they then get after Batman and Robin leave, as nobody is established to be in Gotham now. In the Batcave, Bruce reports to Alfred while Damian is going through another gauntlet that he complimented Damian for his restraint in the field, but Alfred points out that Bruce should have told Damian this in better words to communicate it better, like telling the boy how Bruce as his father is proud of Damian. Alfred's point is almost immediately proven next, when Bruce not telling Damian anything better than a dry "nice work" makes him kill a bat when he thinks he is alone. But Bruce does try to act like a better father to Damian, as the next day shows him buying a dog that he means to give to Damian, and then meets a man he calls Morgan, whom Bruce immediately realizes killed the smugglers from the last night and killed the Russian representative of Batman Incorporated. Morgan confesses knowing Bruce can't attack him without causing a scene, and says that he is carrying on the same mission Bruce is holding himself back in. The mission that they were both put on, with Morgan being here for the intervention before setting off a distraction to disappear.
3 days later.
While Damian is playing chess against Alfred to ignore the dog, Batman is double-checking the Wayne Manor's exterior security and refuses to take Damian with him on patrol as Robin, just telling Damian to name the dog he bought him for being proud of his self-control. Damian, however, refuses to stay home and leaves as Robin after finding one of the 2 trackers Alfred planted on him. Immediately in the next scene, Damian is shown as Robin saving a couple from being robbed by 2 idiots filming it as evidence against themselves. Robin quickly defeats the muggers with his small size and speed, but stops himself right before a voice starts telling him to finish him. Robin quickly catches nobody behind him and realizes him being why Batman has kept him from going out before nobody confirms it by murdering the muggers that Robin just beat up and then paralyzes Damian to make him listen to his gospel, just before Batman shows up to start beat him up like he wanted earlier. Nobody takes the damage given to him before then using a sonic attack to disorient Batman and makes him get run over by a car, after which he takes the father and son to an abandoned open-air movie theater. There, nobody beats a dead horse by making them watch a montage of Batman's villains being arrested and being still alive because Batman is psychologically unable to kill people on purpose. When Batman talks back about not wanting to become the same kind of monster as his enemies, nobody claims that monster hunters do what they must, and that nobody is a less colorful name than Batman that a psychopath would give to himself. Morgan as nobody so wants to push Batman out of the way of Damian's potential. But before he gets to do that, Batman has managed to activate a tracker on his boot and call Alfred remote control Batplane to run nobody away. As that happens, Batman manages to free himself and unparalyzes Robin with the same move nobody did. And then they grapple to the Batplane, but are unable to catch nobody, who sets up an explosion that makes heat-seeking of his body heat impossible. Later in the Batcave, Damian wants Bruce to teach him the move nobody, used to paralyze him and Bruce used to undo it, which Bruce says he doesn't want to teach him yet, due to it being a potentially fatal if done wrong. Instead, he decided to respect Damien enough to tell him who
Nobody
is as Morgan Ducard. In the New 52 continuity, Bruce was taught by 6 teachers in his training around the world, and the last one of them was a French manhunter named Henri Ducard, a special investigator for Interpol and other government agencies tracking down dangerous criminals. And Bruce first met Morgan as Henri Ducard's son when approaching him for training. That is all Bruce is willing to tell Damien right now, and giving him excuses on why causes Damien to storm out with his dog. While Alfred scolds Bruce for his flawed at best parenting skills, Damien is telling the gravestones of his grandparents what a stubborn ass their son is. After taking his frustrations on a firefly, Damien is approached by the dog Bruce got for him, and decides to give him a Shakespearean name because it looks like a Titus. And then
Nobody
shows up to try talking Damien into joining his more effective crusade against criminals.
A little longer than a few minutes later.
Bruce finds Titus alone with a letter telling him to end the lie, and Alfred lets him know that Damien has been drawing pictures of his enemies dead/maimed. Bruce takes this discovery as a late wake-up call to how neglectful parent he has been to his son, which Damien as Robin confirms in the next scene in telling
Nobody
that Alfred has been more of a father to him than Bruce, but Morgan still has to prove himself to Damien on why he should work with him. Meanwhile, Batman has set the Batcomputer to look for Damien's body language from Gotham based on his training sessions, before setting out to look for his son out there by himself. In between hunting down different criminals to interrogate for what they know, Batman takes time to record his thoughts and what he feels like he should as a father tell to Damien as his son. Like for example what he should have told earlier about Henri and Morgan Ducard. To summarize that backstory, remember how Liam Neeson said this in Batman Begins?
Once I had a wife, my great love. She was taken from me.
Well, Peter Tomasi decided to take that line and showcases here how the comic version of Henri Ducard met that wife of his, Felicity Strode, who turned out to be a hired assassin sent to kill him by some people he had taken down. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, Felicity fell in love with Ducard, and after the birth of their son decided to abandon her mission, up until her former employers caught up with her and threatened to kill her son if she didn't finish the job she was hired for. However, the circumstances surrounding wrong place at the wrong time made Morgan overhear his mother agree to kill his father, and as a loyal son to his father, Morgan ended up committing matricide, which led to the father and son being left as the only ones they had left to trust. Some years later, after having worked together as a father and son team, Bruce eventually crossed their path in looking to be trained by the best that Henri Ducard was, and by that time Bruce had been trained well enough by his previous teachers to be able to overpower Morgan, as well as to impress Henri to take Bruce in as an apprentice.
End of flashback.
More about that story later, because next we see Morgan and Damien going after what Morgan claims to be human traffickers, hiding on the foreign soil of a so far unnamed country's embassy. Before being shown how they infiltrate the place, Morgan cuts off the cape from Damien's Robin costume to symbolize cutting him away from Bruce and Batman.
A few moments later.
Morgan and Damien have their supposed human trafficker at their mercy, with Morgan telling Damien to kill him based on only his say-so with a gun. This ultimately turns out to be a test as the gun is not loaded, and Morgan only wanted to see how committed Damien was to pull the trigger. As a reward for having done so, Morgan also teaches Damien the move he used earlier to paralyze him, by making Damien use it on the human trafficker, whom they then take along with them.
Later.
While Bruce comes across their handiwork, renaming it as Ragandian Embassy, we then get the follow-up to that backstory backstory on Bruce's time as the third wheel guest of the Ducard family. Besides some tough love and Henry taking an advantage of Bruce's money, the three worked seemingly well enough in tracking down a terrorist named Hassan for the Interpol, up until the elder Ducard killed Hassan after Bruce unknowingly announced that he is in a good spot to be shot. That is when Bruce had enough and left the Ducards, who naturally saw him as a loose end to be cut out. What saved Bruce's life from Morgan sent to kill him then turned out to be the English weather, in seeing Morgan aiming his sniper rifle on his cab window to dodge being shot at. Bruce naturally retaliated with a response mixed with adrenaline and emotions that left Morgan beaten and thrown back to his father, after which Bruce returned to Gotham for his 0 year as Batman.
End of flashback.
Batman lets Commissioner Gordon take over the embassy's crime scene and asks for 2 hours to find the kidnapped ambassador, who by now has confessed to everything he has been involved with human trafficking to Damian and Morgan. In moving on with their operations, Morgan adds more context to that previous flashback, like how Bruce almost broke his sacred rule by almost killing him after Morgan tried to kill him, and also accuses Bruce for having tried to steal his father from him. Morgan tries to use this as a justification for why he is next preparing to dunk the ambassador into acid, like he did with the Russian Batman earlier in the story, to which Damian naturally protests in the revelation that the R on Damian's Robin costume has a GPS that has been broadcasting their location to Batman. Damian also reveals that he could tell earlier that the gun wasn't loaded, and that he decided on his own to use the problems he and Bruce have as a father and son to get closer to stop Morgan. When Morgan questions why Damian would reject his offer to use his talents to their full potential, Damian declares that because he still respects Bruce as his father, and because he can see that Morgan is enjoying too much what he is doing, Morgan takes the insult as justification to make the GPS on Damian's R to send Batman audio on how he is going to start torturing the boy. So naturally being forced to listen to that while hurrying to their location on a yacht sailing on Gotham River, has Batman be as angry as he was years ago when Morgan was sent to kill him, and fight him just as pissed off, if not more now, as an angry parent who caught someone abusing their child.
You don't remember me. We spoke on the phone 2 days ago. I told you I would find you.
Morgan comments about it just as much, revealing during their fight that after Bruce beat him up and threw him back to his father, Henri Ducard disowned Morgan as his son in seeing him as a worthless nobody, which is how Morgan eventually came to call himself as
Nobody.
and he has done everything in this story as his revenge against Bruce, in separating him from his son, just like how Bruce separated Morgan from his father. Destroying Bruce's legacy as Batman is a bonus in having it be done by a
Nobody.
would then make it go out on a whimper, to which Batman responds that it takes a somebody to prove Morgan's views wrong, before then grabbing Morgan and pushing him into the acid bath that Morgan has been using to erase criminals from existence. Although, thanks to Morgan's nobody armor's protection, he manages to survive long enough until Bruce, unmasked by their fight, sees Damian looking at what he is doing, and comes back to his senses enough to pull Morgan equally unmasked out of the acid. After throwing Morgan away, Bruce focuses on getting Damian out of the yacht, and telling him that he was only a 99.99% sure that Damian would have betrayed him by joining Morgan. While Bruce clears out the debris and tells Damian that they will drop Morgan to the harbor patrol before returning to the Batcave, Morgan leaves Damian some final parting words about coming after his family again. That causes Damian to use that paralyzing move on him and then apologize to his father for the sin he has committed. As the yacht is coming down around them, Damien collapses from exhaustion while apologizing for his actions to Bruce, who can do nothing but focus on getting them both out of there and get back to the Batcave for Alfred's medical attention. On the way there, Damien tells Bruce that he named the dog he got from him as Titus, and when they get there, Bruce tells Alfred to ignore his own injuries to instead focus on his boy. Once Alfred has managed to get Damien stabilized, Bruce brings him up to speed on what Damien did on his own to shut Morgan Ducard as nobody down. Permanently. Bruce then goes to pour out his heart to the portrait of his parents on how he has failed as a father for not having been able to prevent Damien from killing Morgan, and wishing that he had done it himself before passing out. Later, after Alfred has picked him up and given him some words of wisdom, Bruce goes to see Damien resting in his room and leaves the recording he made while looking for him to listen. By the time Damien has listened to all of it, he finds Bruce cleaning up a room in the Wayne Manor that he had not visited since his parents' deaths. The father and son talk about their recent experiences, how Bruce does occasionally work with the kind of rage he showed with Morgan years ago and today, as well as how Morgan was a living representation of what Damien could become if he lets the upbringing from his mother's side override the way how Bruce is trying to raise him. Bruce is so willing to let go what Damien did with an understanding on why he killed Morgan, as long as Damien will never forget that he did it and carries the memory of it with him every day as his way of making amends. Since Alfred won't let them go outside the manor grounds for now, Bruce and Damien spend the next day until the bat signal is fired on the sky by playing fetch with Titus as a mundane father and son activity. Art-wise, when looking at Born to Kill and Peter Tomasi's New 52 Batman and Robin run, Patrick Gleason was able to uphold a similar quality as Greg Capullo did with Scott Snyder's New 52 Batman run. His previous work that I have recently gone through in Robert's PTN series includes the pre-New 52 Green Lantern Corps series, which showcases similar colorful and dark tones that this story needed for its framing, and somewhere along the line I recognized that the pacing of the panels resembled a screenplay, as if this could have also been a pitch for an animated movie. And that is all I feel like I need to say about the art. Now let's discuss the comic's actual story. In his story proposal for Born to Kill, Peter Tomasi describes its premise being about Bruce and Damien struggling to build a relationship based on love, trust and respect, while internal and external forces like Morgan Ducard's are making it harder. Seeing how this was the beginning of the New 52 for Batman and Robin, and with Dick Grayson having gone back to being Nightwing, this was clearly meant to be the tough start of a new status quo, where Bruce and Damien started to properly work together, and meaning to make it work. Bruce has been a parental figure for Dick Grayson, Jason Todd, Tim Drake and Cassandra Cain in the past, but ever since Grant Morrison went to create Damian Wayne as Batman's biological son, based on these two prototypes, both DC and its fandom has begun to pay more attention to Batman's qualities as a parent more than before. Born to Kill was done before people started to make memes about Batman being a bad parent, and it is clear that in this story Bruce is actually trying to be a parent to Damien, while Alfred is calling him out for his mistakes. The worst of which are setting up harsh boundaries that push them apart, and Bruce not communicating well enough back to Damien to keep them closer. Peter Tomasi also knew better than to resort into a cheap action fight scene between them that would have unintentionally been translated as abuse, which was only given from the uncle character of
Nobody.
Morgan Ducard as
Nobody.
is, according to Peter Tomasi's story proposal, said to be intended as the B-story conflict, doing damage to that Batman and Robin's father and son dynamic, as well as I pointed out him being in the story commentary, a physical representation of what Damian could be if he lets the upbringing from his mother's side override the way how Bruce is trying to raise him. Being retrofitted as the son of one of Bruce's old teachers, so makes Morgan a similar brother figure that Bruce could have likely had with Lincoln March, and so similar enough with Bruce to try overtaking his place as Damien's parental figure. And acknowledging what kind of man Henri Ducard was due to the kind of life he lived, Morgan as his son grew up more conditioned to accept death and violence in looking up to his father, and committing matricide for unfortunate reasons must have made it easier for him to accept that way of life when he and Henry became a father and son team. Which Bruce then broke when he entered their lives by being against their pragmatic way of dealing with criminals. Knowing this history and how Bruce almost killed Morgan after he had been sent to kill him, that does put some weight onto Batman's no-kill rule. Not only with how it can make him come across as a hypocrite for having it, which is likely another one of Morgan's motivations, but also in being a good justification on why he has it. Bruce came close to killing Morgan twice in the story, showing that he was also born to kill and has that potential in him, but he tries to practice certain discipline to hold himself back, with needing to show Damien a better example as his father being another reason for Bruce to hold himself back. That still didn't stop Damien from putting Morgan out of his misery, which I assume was the justification Peter Tomasi was going for. Leaving him alive to be taken into custody would have compromised Batman and Robin's identities, even when Batman Incorporated probably could have disproven it, but threatening to come after Damien and his family with lethal intentions was... Maybe Morgan was trying to tempt Damien into killing him as his final hit against Bruce in making his son become a murderer. Or Peter Tomasi didn't know how to write Morgan out of the story in any other way. At the very least, he made Damien immediately acknowledge that what he did was wrong but necessary. And I want to believe that Bruce was willing to let it go by understanding that killing came easier to Damien with his upbringing in the League of Assassins, and how Damien in his then weakened state couldn't see any other way to deal with the situation. Pretty much like with the Eradicator bringing Superman back to life. This was a 1 in a billion situation that could never happen again. Although I'm sure some of DC's writers have tried to do it again. Peter Tomasi did add some consequences to this action later, by creating a daughter character for Morgan, who came after Damien to avenge her father, but that didn't last long. Still, Born to Kill was the beginning of Peter Tomasi's New52 Batman and Robin run, so a lot more did happen in the series after it, up until Grant Morrison's Batman Incorporated series killed Damien off. Peter Tomasi then brought Damien back to life later, as I explained in this video, and I will probably recap it more when/if I will eventually cover Grant Morrison's Batman arcs.
Now, you must journey inwards. You are ready.
Okay, all the necessary source material has now been covered, and it is time for me now to focus on the inspired adaptation in the Batman vs Robin animated movie. I'm going to go rewatch it now, since I have only seen it the one time when it came out. I'll work on the script and some other scripts while I'll be flying to Spain and back after Easter, so while you wait for the final part 4 video to come out, like this part 3 video, comment about what you think about the story it tried to tell, share it for more people to see, and subscribe to be aware for when the part 4 video will be coming out. Also, ding the bell to be alerted for when I will be streaming video games for a chance to chat with me, and may your heart be your guiding key.